This is Bill Brady speaking, doing another recording for the Kingship course. This particular recording is under the category of the headship journey. Fathering is a headship position, and also in the category of fathering. Now, today, in this particular recording, I'm going to speak to you about the job that John the Baptist did of, preparing the people's hearts for Yeshua to come and function as an everlasting father towards them. Now, John came in the spirit and power of Elijah. He wore the mantle of Elijah. This is something that was given to him to carry out along with a mandate. And part of the Elijah mandate is given to us in Malachi, where it says that the spirit of Elijah turns the heart of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. Let's talk about who fathers are and who children are. Fathers beget children in the natural, but fathers also in the spiritual fathers beget spiritual children. And the children grow up to the place where they then become sons. When Yeshua was just about ready to die on the cross and then be resurrected, be buried, resurrected, and ascend and be seated next to the right hand of God, he said to I believe there were still 12 at that point, apostles that he had trained, he said, little children. He was speaking to them. He spoke to them and spoke to them in the name little children. Excuse me. They were still children with respect to him as everlasting father, which puts this in perspective. I mean, these guys have been trained for quite a period of time under Jesus's not personal training, but 1-on-12 training, and in many cases, personal training. Jesus trained them as 12 in groups of 12, and then he trained the three, Peter, James, and John, to a higher level. And then John himself was the one that laid on Yeshua's breast at the Last Supper. So there was an even closeness, a deeper closeness between Yeshua and John than there was between Yeshua and any of the other 11. My point is that these great spiritual men that had had access to Jesus and been trained very closely by him, at this point, after all that training, they were still little children. They had been trained to do some works, but they hadn't yet been trained to do the works that Jesus was doing as a king, the Christ, or the works that he was doing as the Son of God, or the works that he was doing as the Son of Man, and certainly not the works that he was doing as the Word become flesh, tabernacling amongst them. So Jesus was training them on some of the very basic works that he was doing. So they were still children. They weren't yet sons. They weren't being trained to do everything that he was doing at that time. A father at the highest level trains a son to do what the father has been doing. Father shows the son all that he has been doing. That's what John tells us. So children and fathers, two levels of receiving from a father. An apostle functions as a father towards everybody that is receiving from them. But the people that are receiving from him are generally functioning as children. That's the name that they're functioning under. The ones that he is training to do the apostle work that he's been doing, in other words, those that have been called to be apostles, those are sons. Now, in Jesus's case, they weren't sons because they weren't being trained to be the Word or the Son of Man or the Son of God, but they were being trained as apostles, but they weren't sons at that point to Yeshua because he had much higher functions that he was doing that he wasn't even showing to them. He revealed the name to them, but he didn't show them what he was doing in those names and how to do it. So my point is, a child, all the people, let's say you're an apostle in an ecclesia, all the believers in an ecclesia that are learning from you are your children. All as long as they honor you as an apostle and us also as a father. Then those ones that you are training as apostles, they are your sons. So father, child, son, and sons are trained to become fathers that are equal in identity and function to the father who trained them. Okay, so you understand the difference now between father, well, let's do it in order from lowest to highest, child or children, son or sons, father or fathers. There's also a adult father to adult father, I mean, adult child to adult to a father relationship where you're both functioning as fathers and you still can learn from one another. So that's another relationship that there is above the child, son, father, father-son relationship than father-father relationship where the person is an adult. One of them is an adult son, has been fully trained. There's also a father-father relationship between one who was a father and another who's a father, but they're not actually fathers of one another in any way. They're just sharing things that they had revealed to them. So this works for you when you honor your father and mother, right? When you honor someone, you give them the ability to function towards you in the name that you honor them in. So Yeshua was the prophet, the apostle, the king. And in Nazareth, when he went there, there were just a few people that honored him as a prophet, and probably nobody that honored him as an apostle because nobody knew about apostles at that time. And probably well, if they didn't honor him as a prophet, they certainly didn't honor him as an apostle, and they certainly didn't honor him as a king. My point is that Yeshua was functioning in several names at that point, including Everlasting Father, maybe not quite yet. But anyway, only the ones that someone honored him in was he able to function towards that person in. So when you honor someone, it's not for the benefit of the person that you honor. They've already got honor from God. They don't need your honor. They may be frustrated that you're not honoring them, but it's not because of anything within themselves. If initially an immature father might be frustrated that you're not honoring them for their benefit. I've been there and done that. But once you grow up and realize that really this honor thing is for the benefit of the person that you're training up, then you realize that you can only function towards them in the names that they honor you in. So Yeshua was prophet, apostle, and king, and in Nazareth, most of them didn't honor him any of those things, so he couldn't do anything for him. The ones that did honor him as a prophet, he was able to heal. The scripture says there were a few folks that he was able to heal at that point. He was able to lay hands on a few people and heal them. Couldn't do any mighty works, though. He couldn't do any miracles there because nobody was honoring him for doing miracles. So honor your father is for your benefit so that your father can then function as a father towards you. Now, that doesn't mean bossing you around. Now, we've all had parents, and parents have functioned in their mother and father positions, depending on whether you've even had a father in your life that you knew or whether they were present or not. You have had a experience of parents, of parenting, and you've had experience of being a student with teachers in school. You've had an experience of being with bosses, and you've been in situations where you were basically abused in one way or another, or oppressed. The person had you under their thumb. You will do what I tell you to do, which parents sometimes have to do when you got a child that wants to cross the street and get hit by a car. you have to forcefully uh, grab them and keep them from going across. Um, because the primary thing you're doing right there is keeping your child alive and uninjured. Um, so my bottom line point is, if you honor someone as a father, then you can then have that person function towards you as a father. Now back to John the Baptist. He functioned in a prophet function wearing a mantle, and that mantle was turning the heart of future fathers to future children. Yeshua came along and functioned as a father. He didn't need his heart turned to anybody. He already had that going on. But the next generation needed their hearts turned towards the children. Father's not going to function towards the children unless they have their heart turned towards the child. Um, and the child will not allow the father to father them unless they've had their heart turned towards the father as a child. And they then are willing to receive. I'm picturing as I speak the parent robins out in my lawn here that sometimes a year there's an adult robin out there and another child. There's an immature robin that's almost as big as the adult. It doesn't have quite the adult plumage on it, but it's following that adult around and it's begging for worms, right? Father, child, or mother, child, which depending on which of the two parents are involved. Um, it's almost funny because this bird is obviously, this young one is obviously just on the edge of being able to do this for themselves, and probably should be doing this for themselves, but they're still trailing mom and dad around and expecting to be not spoon fed, but beak fed, right? Uh, you catch the worm, then you give it to me. But that's a child that's functioning towards a parent. Probably should be growing up soon to do it for themselves. So John the Baptist came along, and part of his job, because he had other things he did in the spirit and power of Elijah with that mantle upon him, one of the things he did was prepare. He turned the hearts of the fathers towards the children, and he turned the hearts of the children towards the parents, towards the fathers. And actually, what he was doing was, as I think about it, was coming into effect 2 generations later. I mean, he didn't need to turn Yeshua's heart towards the children. I wouldn't think, because, well, maybe he did. Okay, so that is John the Baptist functioning as the prophet of his generation, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. Now, everything I said here applies to today too, because there are people today that wear the mantle of Elijah, and it's doing the same function. So there's a prophet function wearing the mantle of Elijah that prepares this whole fathering thing to work. It turns the heart of the fathers to the children and turns the heart of the children to the fathers. Now, I am a father. I'm a spiritual father. I've been teaching these things for years now, several years, probably coming close to 10 years now. And there are people out there that are my children that are listening to them. Many of them have never met me, maybe never been on a Zoom with me. But you're functioning towards me as a child, and I am functioning blanket across board here towards you as a father, to you as a child. I can also function towards you as a father, towards a son. And even that you could get from me here on Zoom without having ever met me, or me even knowing who you are. As far as me functioning as a father to train you to do everything that I'm currently doing, I have nobody that I'm doing that for at this point, and nobody that I'm doing that for, to the level of what I'm currently functioning in. I'm not even allowed to reveal some of the things I function in yet. You saw me do that either in this video or the last one, the previous one. Okay, so that's enough for this. So the prophet function with respect to fathering is wearing the mantle of Elijah and doing this work of preparing the hearts of the children to be able to honor the father so the father can function towards them so they can grow up as a child and eventually become a son and then be trained to do what the father's doing, either partially to some level of what the father's doing or all the way to the full level of what the father is doing. Okay, so that's enough on this topic for now. Uh, these are new things. You may not have ever heard these things before. For me, you may have heard some of them from me before. Even some of the things I've said today here are new that I've not spoken before other than here. You need to actually see this revelation of fathering and receive it. Whether you're going to be a father yourself or not, you're definitely going to be a child. Everybody starts out as a baby and then a child, right? Babies are on milk, children are on solid food. And then son gets trained to do the works that the father's been doing.